All right, everybody, this is us. I hope you can hear me and see me. Somebody says hello, and that's reassuring. If you can hear me and see me, it would be awesome if you'd pop a little chatty thing in the right-hand side. Because I tell you what, this is the first one of these I've done, and I don't mind telling you, I'm just a little bit nervous, but there's lots of people. Hi, Ben. Hi, Kat. Hi, Stan. Right, you can stop now. That's fine. It's enough. It's enough. Stop. Stop. God, blimey. So listen, welcome to the first of the Landcats home games. We were going to run a session in Edinburgh in May called Home Game, and this thing happened, and then we weren't allowed to do it anymore. So we've stopped all that. And so what we thought we would do is to do a weekly set of webinars for no more than half an hour, and it's got nothing at all to do with coronavirus or COVID-19, well, the same thing, innit, or any unpleasant stuff at all. We're going to try and cover the sorts of things that we would cover if we were doing an event in kind of normal times. So we're going to talk about industry stuff. We'll talk about business issues, which are nothing to do with the current unpleasantness. We'll talk about regulation. I'm going to invite some guests on each week to talk about some interesting stuff. This week we're joined by the Isle of Wight by the from the Isle of Wight by the pulchritudinous Mr. Michael Barrett, who you will be seeing down here. And Mike's peering down into his camera there. If you look very carefully, you can see up his left nostril, which is fine. I did say try and balance your camera mic on some hardback books, but they've used them all in the Isle of Wight already, owing to a short toilet paper. And that's a shame. Stephen asks, is Mike eating or talking to himself? And there's no reason he can't be doing both, Stephen, at any given point in time. So we've got Mike this week is going to do a little bit of regulation stuff with us, and then we'll find some other guests next week, unless we can't, in which case we'll have Mike again. And let's be honest, once you've had Mike Barrett once, it's not necessarily something that you want to repeat. So let's kind of dive into it. Those of you that know Crowdcast will know that you can ask questions down the bottom. I will try and kind of deal with those. This is kind of first time driving Crowdcast for me, so be gentle with me. And Linda, I notice from the Landcat, says this t-shirt is pretty special. This is my Misfits t-shirt. There will be a t-shirt each week. And I'll try and gauge just how offensive they can be. So let's have a little look at what we're going to cover this week. And here it is. So that's the endearing awkwardness bit done. When I say endearing, it may not be all that endearing. And then I thought we'd just talk a little bit about platform market, right? I don't think I will play you a riff, Chris, but thanks all the same. There is a small collection behind me, and this is what's keeping me sane down here. So we'll talk a little bit about the platform market. Then we're going to talk about PROD a little bit and some regulation, and Mike will do that for us. And then, all right, we do need cheering up. So I've got a joke, and then I hope in weeks to come, you will tell me a joke too. I know I said we're not going to talk about Corona and stuff. There is one thing I just wanted to highlight for you, and I'm going to try and show you it now. We've updated our platform directory, which is inside our system called Platform Analyzer, with let's focus in on that, with a load of information from the platforms on their responses to COVID-19. And if you go into the platform directory, which you can find at Landcat platform analyzer, you'll see, and register for this, you'll see platform directory is completely free, and you can come in and find lots of things out. There's a premium version as well, but you don't need to be a premium user to find what we've got here. So a bunch of the platforms have already given us a load of information, and if you go into each platform, you'll see here something called macro environment, and a category here with operational response to COVID-19 and MiFID 10% drop approach. So just on this Aegon one, Aegon have been really good at sharing information actually on this one. And so those that have given us data you'll find those things out there, and more are giving us it all the time. So that's there as a resource if you would like to have it. So let's go back to our little slides here. I said to Mike when I'm doing this, I'm not going to narrate what I'm doing while I'm doing it, like you do when you're kind of feeding a 2-year-old or something. But I'm feeling miserably on that. Right. So we'll dive in and have a little talk about platforms and stuff, because they're still there, right? I imagine some of them are feeling it a little bit, but they've all still got to look after everyone's money. And we got, finally last week, we got to the full Q4 AUA and inflows and so on for all the different platforms. So I thought I'd share this with you. And also, we've published for the first time our platform ratings. I say our platform ratings are really your platform ratings, and about 700 advisors have given ratings on various aspects of different platforms. So I'll share a bit of that as well, and see if we've got anything interesting to talk about. Now, all these AUA figures obviously are a little bit different this week than they were at the tail end of 2019, but still really interesting to see what's been going on. So the left-hand kind of group of channels there, where it says all channels, there's a number of platforms in there, of course, who have different sources of business, institutional stuff or workplace stuff or whatever it might be. And we try and show the total picture and then break out the advised channel where we can. And sometimes that means we've got to estimate things a little bit. Sometimes we can't do it, but we give it a pretty good bash. So if we stick, maybe, given our audience today, if we stick maybe to the advised channel a little bit, let's have a look at who's doing well. You'll see there's a heat map involved there. That's because Steve Nelson was involved at some point. And obviously the secret element to heat mapping is a very, very, very closely guarded and has nothing to do with conditional formatting on Excel in any way. So let's see who kind of came out really well. Well, I mean, there's some quite big figures posted. If we look at somebody like Aviva, and obviously Aviva had its fair share of issues with replatforming, but showing a really big increase on Q4 2018. So they've managed to kind of come through, and we're not doing flow stats today, but they've done pretty well. ARC actually wrote a lot of business. Now, some of that was upgrade from old book, but there's actually quite a bit of it that wasn't. There are still some big firms really putting some chunky business on there. True Potential doing really well, powering through, not the biggest platform in the world, and obviously a different business model than a number of people would necessarily align themselves with, but nonetheless doing really well. And some other kind of really interesting figures, maybe not at the biggest end, but look at Parmenion there. Now, again, not the biggest platform, so we've got the law of small numbers in there, but coming through at nearly 35% growth in assets over the last year, which is really good. Even with the problems that have been out there, there's lots of firms doing, reasonably well. We've got some good figures posted by let's have a look. We've got 7 doing well there, 21% rise. AJ Bell on 23% rise. And even the Aegon platform, where they're obviously still in the middle of the issues that they're trying to get sorted there, then they managed, at least stock markets have helped, but they did manage to post a positive growth. Stan shipping in Aviva growth based on transfers from their legacy book, basically eating yourself a margin much lower on platform than on legacy. I think there's something in that, Stan. There's certainly some upgrade in there, but equally we speak to lots of firms that are turning back on using Aviva. So yes, it's had its problems, but how much do firms, kind of open question, right? How much do firms want to keep kicking existing suppliers, platforms for problems that they have had, and how long does that go on. I think Aviva is turning that support back on. I think that's good news for firms like Accentric and for Aegon Platform, actually, that are kind of coming through. I think it is possible for people to do that. But obviously, when people do turn back on, they're on a bit of a watch list. And if we look, it's quite a small table there on the right-hand side. This is a kind of playback of the advisor ratings, which some of you, I'm pretty sure, looking at the names that are logged in, have already chipped into, which is brilliant. We want to run these quarterly, so we're hoping people will come back in. We'll ask you to do it. We'll come back in and re-rate platforms. But in there, we've asked, I think it's 19 different aspects about different platforms and get you to rate those. And right up at the top there is a little bit small. I'm sorry about that, but I needed a picture of a funny cat, and you can all just squint because I don't get as many as I used to. But the kind of top of the heap there was Parmenion, which had just overwhelmingly good ratings from advisors. And I see the last comments from Sarah at Parmenion. Hey, Sarah, who just came on at the right time. But really, really good ratings for Parmenion. Premium, now, again, not the biggest operation in the world and relatively few firms using it at the moment, and it just sneaked into our minimum kind of level of ratings, did brilliantly. Really, really good ratings there, as did Novia. Novia did great. Transact always does well, and True Potential, absolutely right up there. Under Premium, I know it's a wee bit funny, is Novia. That's Novia right there. And Parmenion have sent us a smiley face, so that's lovely. Someone asked a question: can you distinguish genuine organic growth from asset churning? Oh, wow, it's really hard to do, mainly because platforms don't always want to talk about what they've, inverted commas, upgraded versus what's genuine new business. So when we ask, obscured by me and Mike, so much, Andy, is obscured by me and Mike. It's an occupational hazard. But yeah, it's Novia. The running order, for those that are having trouble seeing it, and I'll share these slides around, it's Parmenion, Premium, Novia, Transact, True Potential. And then it's Nucleus under that. And no surprise, perhaps, just playing more of a supporting role at the moment is the Aegon Platform for pretty obvious reasons. Alliance Trust Savings, well, that's getting taken care of by the move to Embark, and Accentric, who are coming out of the woods now, I think, on their replatforming. So I'm expecting to see them do a little bit better. So a really great result for a few people in there, lots of people with lots of other things to work on. As for the upgrade stuff, we tend to pick it up where we can from annual accounts, that kind of stuff. People sometimes narrate those sort of things, Chris, but it is quite hard to catch something. Great question from Tim. Will ratings change as platforms keep insisting on paper and wet signatures? And we've seen with Aegon and with some other platforms, people are being sent to work from home, and obviously if you have paper-based processes, life gets very tricky there. But equally, how much resilience can you bake into a model? What if, the internet shuts down and there's no capability for paper or whatever else? So there's a bit of push me, pull you inside this as well. But my short answer, Tim, would be absolutely. Absolutely, I should think that will change for those platforms that are able to keep things running as we go through at the moment. So there you go, just a little bit of intro, just some figures in there. The advised platform market at the end of Q4, and hopefully it'll come back pretty soon to this, was worth about 450 billion, and we don't include in there some of the sort of white label propositions, so some of the SEI stuff, kind things like Succession. We don't include St James's Place. Some other people include the advised bit of Hargreaves Lansdowne and all that. We don't include any of those. It's just the stuff that you might reasonably choose if you're an independent financial advisor. And that's what we've got in there. So about 450 billion. And if we look at all the channels for all those platforms, we're up at about 550 billion. And you know what they say, 450 billion here, 450 billion there soon adds up to real money. Stan, I know SJP isn't really a platform, but there's an argument that some people make to include it in these kind of assets. And there you go. That's an argument for another week, and we should maybe have that. Right. We'll leave that there, and we're doing all this in half an hour, so let's hand over to Mr. Michael Barrett, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll get on to a bit of regulation.
Hello. Regulation. So very briefly, this is a slide which is from our annual advice survey, which we do with advisors, State of the Advisor Nation. And I think everybody involved in that, whether and in particular the advisors who contributed to that, will have seen the output from this in all its glorious detail in the last few weeks. And yeah, repeating the thanks I think we've made a number of times to everyone who participated about that. One of the many questions we asked was around PROD, and it's been over 2 years now since MiFID and PROD landed on our doorsteps, and what has actually changed. Have advisors done anything with that? And this has evolved over the last couple of years. So when we spoke to advisors 2 years ago and asked them about PROD, the response tended to be, what the hell are you talking about? And then about a year ago, it was kind of, oh yeah, it's that thing I need to do something about. And now we're starting to see actually there's quite an evidence that people are doing a lot about it. So 10% there, it's changed their thinking quite a bit. And yeah, the 45% there, the majority, I think feels where most people are landing naturally on this. It's starting to influence the way firms are thinking. 16% there still saying they don't segment. PROD isn't about segmenting. It doesn't mandate segmentation, albeit that's almost certainly where most advice firms are going to end up. And I think that 16%, I would suggest, are probably not in a good place in terms of compliance. So if you're finding yourself with some extra time on your hands at the moment and working your way through the to-do list, then PROD is maybe something we would suggest firms should be addressing. So how to address it, the suggested process. Maestro, if you can change the slide, please. Well, thank you. And so summarising on one slide how we think firms actually should go about addressing PROD compliance. And this is work which we've kind of pulled together over these last couple of years, and based on the experience we've had, there's been a few firms where we've been working directly with them, had loads of conversations out on the road with various providers as well. So kind of pulling all of that experience into one place. By far the most important thing on this slide, and it feels a bit strange to have it at kind of the bottom, but it's kind of maybe a hierarchy of needs things. The most important thing around all of this is always individual client suitability. And we hear a lot around kind of PROD and the counter around going through the process of doing a little bit of a segmented approach. That yeah, every one of my clients are individuals. We treat them as individuals. They all get the same great service, and that's true to a certain extent. But you pull away at the layers of that, and almost certainly you find that there's some sort of commonality of solution with these things, where eventually you get to a point where yes, every client is treated as an individual through the service proposition, but they're going to end up on a similar platform or in the same investment solution. And that's what PROD is about, is identifying where those commonalities occur and building a process and a structure around all of that. I think more broadly, if firms are saying, well, why should we do this? There's the compliance point, because most of what we're talking about in PROD are hard and fast rules. And as I said, 2 years on since these rules came in place, not being able to evidence compliance with something which is a hard rule doesn't feel to be a good place to be. Hear a lot about how the advice kind of industry is turning to become much more of a profession. And I think there's an awful lot of truth in around that. but a profession makes sure that they're compliant with the rules, whether irrespective of how barking you think the rules are. You can spend some time arguing against them, but you've got to do the do around all of this. And secondly, I think it feels like there's, again, from the firms we've worked with, there's actually a bit more of a business benefit beyond just ticking the compliance box. So PROD is all about understanding what your clients need, what they want to be achieving with their financial life, and making sure that you deliver solutions and services that best meet those needs. So there's businesses I've worked with recently where you can really start to have some quite challenging conversations with the business owners about the question of value for money. So are the clients that you're servicing receiving value for money from the services? And actually, are there clients who you're undercharging because the work involved in meeting those needs is either the process needs to be refined to make it much more efficient, or you're just simply not charging them enough to reflect the work that's involved. I think those are really, really important and good business disciplines to be having, and especially I think at the moment, if we're going to be having some challenging times, making sure the business is operating as effectively as possible feels to me to be a smart thing to be doing. So PROD gives you the framework, I think, to do all of this. Very simplistically, it's about documenting what your clients need and how you want to fulfill those needs. So nobody's saying what type of service proposition you need to have, and whether it's a proper financial planner who sees the clients 4 times a year or something a bit more transactional. As long as you're doing that client suitability, either one of those is fine. So yeah, what do the clients need? Almost certainly you're going to have different sets of needs, and that's a segment you just created there. So you're segmenting around needs rather than, I don't know, people who sit in dungeons with wearing T-shirts and despite being 30 years older than they are. That's a segment you could build around, or all of those types of things. Yeah, building your services around actually what the clients need. You can then think about actually your criteria for that. So what do you want from a platform? What do you want from an investment solution? So a firm I'm working with at the moment, we're having some quite clear platform criteria where there's a bunch of clients who need full-on at retirement functionality, plus income payments, all of that type of thing. And there's another bunch of clients who don't. So we're going to end up probably on different platforms for all of that. On the investment solution side, that's where you can bring in things like if you have a view on active or passive, ESG, any kind of criteria around what your firm, what the business believes on selecting investments. You can then, once you've documented that and kind of this is what we need to be doing, again, a really good task, perhaps if you've got time to hand at the moment, spend some time actually going away researching all of that. So spend some quality time on analytics to do the investment side. And we would suggest that you spend some quality time on Platform Analyzer to do the platform due diligence research as well. And then all of that you build into both your criteria, the end results of that, so your panel of platforms you're using, and you make sure as I said, you always achieve individual client suitability. And the best way to do that is you have these segments with this high level view of what most clients need and how you're going to deliver those solutions. But really important that you highlight the exceptions to that. So the firm I'm working with at the moment, we've got an exception we're making a distinction between employed and self-employed clients at the accumulation stage. So somebody who's in a relatively stable job, steady income, still needs the same sort of platform and investment solution, but their planning needs, their tax needs are radically different. And also this advice firm has a whole heap of clients who are older in the kind of the at-retirement decumulation space, but they're extraordinarily wealthy and they're never going to run out of money. So they don't need a full-on planning, cash flow, hug the advisor 4 times a year session. They just need to invest and wait until they die and pass on the money through inheritance. So you're looking always to make sure there's individual exceptions there so that individual suitability is achieved and you're not just kind of painting by numbers and putting clients into boxes. And that's it. That's PROD in 8 minutes. And if anyone wants to know any more about that, then yeah, give us a shout.
Cool, thank you very much. And there is loads more that I think we can come back into. One of the things that we don't really have time to get into today is like how granular does segmentation get. I think that's a good topic. So we might ask some firms, any of you that are watching that want to talk about what you've maybe done if you've thought about target client groups. The PROD wording in PROD 3.3 says that you must do it to a sufficiently granular level, and it doesn't help you at all with what sufficiently granular actually means, because that would be too helpful. So that's maybe something we can get into in future weeks. Listen, we're coming to the end of our time now, and we want to make sure we finish on time, because at 1 o'clock, the paraplanners are running one of their powwows, or a howwow, I think, or possibly a powwow or a nowwow, or I'm not sure exactly what it's called. But they are over at that address there. So if you would like to keep doing a bit more webinar while you eat your sandwich or whatever, then they're always really good value, and definitely worth doing. That's kicking off at 1 o'clock. I thought we could do with cheering up, and I noticed yesterday that it was Barry Cryer's 85th birthday, and so I thought we could all do the joke. And so I'm going to tell you a Barry Cryer joke. I'm going to murder it, but that's what we'll finish off with. And for those of you that know Barry Cryer stuff, this is the moth joke, and I love this. So a couple are having an affair in the time-honoured fashion. They're not observing social distancing protocols in any way, and they are hard at it, as you might say, when the door goes, and the female half of this particular combination of 4 legs and 4 arms says, oh my god, it's my husband, he's not meant to be coming back till later on. Oh my god, quick, hide in the bathroom. So our man jumps out of bed and legs it to the ensuite, and hides in there. And the woman very quickly kind of sorts herself out, and her husband comes into the bedroom and says, what are you doing in bed? She said, well darling, I was really missing you, and I was just thought I'd get in bed and wait for you to come back. I thought that maybe we could have a little bit of fun when you've been back, because I really have been lonely. And I said, well, that sounds very nice. I think I'll definitely take you up on that. I probably would say it in a different way to that. But I'll just go and freshen up first in the bathroom. She's like, no, you're fine as you are. He says, no, listen, I'm a key and critical worker. I need to go and wash my hands, obviously, for at least 20 seconds whilst reciting happy birthday twice. So I'll just pop into the bathroom and freshen up, and I'll be back out in a second. So he goes into the bathroom, whereupon he finds the other chap absolutely starkers, and the chap stares at him, and he stares at the chap, and the chap starts going, and the husband says, what, who the hell are you? What the hell are you doing in my bathroom? And the guy says, oh, I'm from the council, mate. I'm from the council, pest control. You've got a terrible moth problem. I'm just coming in here trying to sort out the worst of it at the moment. And the husband said, but you're completely naked. And the other chap looks down and goes, bastards! And that's my joke. Listen, thank you very, very much for tuning in. 140 of you did, which is amazing. Thank you so much. I imagine it'll be less next week, but we will run it next week, and we hope you will come and join us again. In the meantime, every time we do one of these, we'll put this up. One of the guys at the Landcat is a Samaritan, and tells us that they have never, ever been busier. And that's, when you think about what that means, that's not a particularly great thing. If you are in a position that you're able to support somebody through this kind of time, and you feel like doing anything, then you can do a lot worse than the Samaritans. Wish everybody a lustrous confinement for the next week. We'll see you then, and do go and join our friends with the Paraplanners powwow after this. All the best.